to be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canada hockey fans in the United States.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hockey Time Machine. I'm Glenn Dreyfus. You may not recognize the name George Pesut, who played 2 seasons in the NHL as part of a 2-decade career in pro hockey. But after you read his new book, The Fourth Period, Between the Ice Sheets, I guarantee you will never forget him. And what a cast of characters George introduces us to. The animal, the trickster, the bionic man, the robot, the sword, the house cat. This book is worth getting just for the nicknames. And we welcome George Pesut. George, thank you for making time for us.
Thank you, Glenn.
Let's start with your junior career. How many junior teams did you play for?
So I guess you're asking me to name them all, huh?
Or as many as you can remember.
Or which ones I didn't. Anyway, I started Junior B with the Saskatoon Max, and we had a very successful season because the Canada Winter Games are going on in '71, so we represented Saskatchewan. We won everything, and we won the province that year. And the following year, I graduated to, I actually almost made the junior A roster when I was 15, the Blades, when I was still a centerman. But they sent me back, and I played senior hockey when I was 15 already. I was 6 foot, 185 pounds. So, I had a pretty good size. And then in my 18th year, that's when I made the Blades roster. Only to be traded. I took off to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan I thought I was kind of like a big wheel making a lot of money in Tier 2. But Jackie McLeod, the Canadian national coach before, dampened those plans and traded me to Flin Flon, where I immediately got off the bus and got my hair shaved and so on in Patty Janelle's boot camp. Played in Flin Flon till Christmas, around Christmas time, where I was traded to the Victoria Cougars for 4 players and I think some future considerations. So I guess as a cocky kid, I thought my stock was going up in the hockey world. And then I was very fortunate to get back to the Saskatoon Blades championship team in the 1972-73 season.
With Flin Flon, there was a team drill called the Bone Crusher.
Yeah, Patty. I would say Patty, just like probably Larry Wilson with the Robins, had a lot of medieval practices he used, and that was because we did the sacrilegious thing of losing 2 home games at the Whitney Forum in Flin Flon, which was just unheard of. So we had 2 days of bone crusher drills and 3 days of skating. We never saw a puck all week. And in the evening, we put boxing gloves on and basically got the chance to beat the shit out of our teammates.
Now, another Flin Flon story. Tell me about the time the team arrived late. The whole team arrived late for a home game.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard of that in hockey lore, but Patty Janelle got the wild idea that we were playing better on the road than we were at home. So he had this cloak and dagger idea of going on a bus ride in the morning of our home game. only we got stuck in the mud, God knows, like hour and a half outside of Flin Flon. By the time they got the bus unstuck, the home team or the visiting team, the Regina Pats, were warming up, and no one knew where the Flin Flon Bombers were.
Where were you?
We were out an hour and a half from Flin Flon, and we got stuck in a rainstorm and mud. The bus got stuck in the mud, and the referees and everybody around, the officials with the Bombers, were asking, where the team is, and no one knew where the Flin Flon Bombers were for their home game.
But you did eventually make it.
We made it, but we didn't have any warm up because we were too late. It was pretty comical, and I don't think it really worked to Patty's advantage that night.
Now, this isn't the type of statistic that you typically find on the back of hockey cards or on online databases, but how many beers could you drink in 30 seconds?
Well, I might have to correct you there, Glenn, because I learned the talent from some of my drinking buddies in Saskatoon at the Red Lion Inn when I was like 15, and I drank 19 drafts, each in a second and a half apiece. So I think that works out to 27 seconds.
Oh my God. Well, it's great to be young, isn't it?
Yeah. We all think we're invincible.
Speaking of getting bombed, see that segue? That's pretty good. In Victoria, you planted a smoke bomb in a Zamboni.
Yeah, that was pretty funny because we had this old guy, Des. I think his last name was Monk. He was the Zamboni driver, the arena manager, and he was the most belligerent, cantankerous old bastard that you ever seen in your life. So after putting up with months of this guy, I finally said to the boys, I think we got to play a practical joke on him. So I put a smoke bomb in his machine just before he's going to go out after practice and make new ice. So there's about 3 or 4 of us on the top row of the old Memorial Arena in Victoria. And old Des, he had a kind of a peg leg. He's driving the Zamboni about halfway across the ice. The smoke bomb goes off, and he thinks the machine's exploded. So he jumps off the machine and runs the other way. In the meantime, the Zamboni crashes into the end boards and takes a chunk out.
Oh my goodness.
I never got caught, though.
So I think the statute of limitations has probably run out.
Yeah, I think so. That's why I left the book so long.
So back playing for Saskatoon, this story needs some explanation. You and a teammate were in the penalty box and decided to get back on the ice before the penalties expired?
Yeah, my teammate, his name was Russ Wally the Whip Walker, because of his, I think he had the biggest windup for a slap shot in pro hockey. And he was kind of a belligerent guy. And I think we had like a 25 game winning streak going. We only lost 11 games that whole season out of 68. And Wally just said to me, we are always beating these Swift Current. They were a really poor team, bottom of the league, the Broncos at the time, Swift Current. And so he just said, this is just too boring beating them all the time. Let's cause some shit. So we jumped out of the penalty box before our penalties expired, and I fought this guy back, and then Ruskowski, who was Terry Ruskowski, is a pretty tough guy. And then I went to the bench and asked their coach, Stan Dunn, to send Tiger Williams out because they wanted to lay a little cheese on him, la fromage. And Stan said he's hiding behind the bench and he won't come out.
Well, I guess he wasn't quite the Tiger Williams we came to know and love.
No, Tiger, he kind of knew. He picked his spots, and he didn't want anything to do with me. So I only got 3 fighting majors. So, going over to 2 fighting majors, you know, on top of my existing penalties.
You were number 5, by the way, in the photo we showed with the blades. I want to talk to you about another opponent. You described getting to play against a First Nations hockey legend and a person we were privileged to have on Hockey Time Machine a few years back, Fred Sasakamoose. What are your memories of him, and also how hard he could shoot the puck?
Well, growing up in Saskatchewan, and I was one town away from Fred, he was in Duck Lake with Beardy's Reserve. So, I probably heard Fred's stories from when I was 10 years on about him with the Chicago Blackhawks and his shot, which they said at the time was almost as lethal as Bobby Hull. And then coming from the reserve and all he had to go through and the abuse and the residential schools and everything. And we had a couple guys in town that were, in fact, I think there was another guy, Marvin Brown, that actually went to the Blackhawks camp at the time. And I used to hear countless stories, but probably the best one I heard was in a senior game where Fred, he might have been maybe coming to the end of his career, and he let go one of his patented shots. It split the goalie's mask in half,
Wow.
and the goalie was laying down the crease, bleeding like a pig. But the funniest one was that the shot still had enough juice to go through the wire meshing, and everyone thought the goalie was dead. Thank God he survived. But those are kind of some of the Fred Sasakamoose stories that I used to hear as a kid. And I took part. I didn't take part, but I listened to that session with Fred, and I thought it was awful sad because I know COVID. He passed away, I think maybe a year and a half after the segment. But when I was growing up, I mean, he was just a legend in Saskatchewan hockey.
We've talked about a number of your escapades. We haven't really focused on how good a junior player you were at the year-end awards banquet. You cleaned up. What a great night that must have been for you.
Yeah, I think to be truthful, Glenn, a lot of the motivation came mid-season because they have the WHA All-Star game, and Jackie McLeod, who is the coach for the West team, I believe, decided to take Pat Price and Dave Lewis instead of me, which really hurt me inside. And I remember I wore this funny little pink helmet at practice. We were all making jokes because we were kind of like the all shit team and the star. I think the guys that went were Bobby Bourne and Pat Price and Dave Lewis. So it gave me a lot of motivation the rest of the season to prove them wrong. And then I walked away with the Best Defenseman award and first team All-Star, and kind of cleaned up on the awards.
And this photo is of a Notre Dame coach, right?
Yeah, that I was Father Ethel Murray at Wilcox was a famous priest, and he was quite the guy. And I had won. I think I won the MVP for the midget league, the juvenile league, and the high school league, and also rookie of the year in the senior league. So that was when I was 15 years old. So I had a hell of a season.
You were recognized for your play. You're drafted by St. Louis of the NHL and Cleveland of the WHA. For a 19-year-old who was earning $200 a month in juniors, the money being thrown around at you must have made your head spin.
Yeah, it was, it's like from going from 0 to 60. It was pretty crazy. In fact, I made a comment in the book there when I was drafted 24th overall by NHL and World Hockey, the Blues and the Cleveland Crusaders. So when Nick Milletti, the president of the Crusaders, called me, and I I was their first pick because Lanny McDonald had signed with Toronto. So he just said to me, kid, I told him my dream was the NHL, but he said, try me. What would you like? And I knew some numbers that were flying around. So I said to him, well, like you said, I'm going from $200 a month. I said, $100,000 signing bonus, a boathouse and a car, and 240,000 for 3 years. And he said, no problem. So then my head was really spinning.
So you decide to stay with the Blues. Eventually, they send you down. And I was surprised to learn that, at least in the old Western League, after beating each other's brains out, teams would go out drinking together.
Yeah, everybody kind of knows it's. I guess it'd be almost like the Wildcat Wrestling or something, where they put on the show and then after they go for drinks. Except, I think you probably read the section there with Bobby Gassoff, my roommate, and it seems like a lot of the tough guys, they're pretty quiet guys off the ice, but then once Gas got like 226s of whiskey in him and started twirling the balls around like a circus performer, the other team, I don't think they partied with us anymore after that.
So in the first 100 pages of the book, you swung your stick at one coach, tried to choke another coach, and smacked a police officer sitting with you in the penalty box. So what was going on with you?
Well, I was a pretty calm and collective guy till I got to my breaking point. But then if I went over the breaking point, then it was kind of like the point of no return.
And you probably had justification too.
I think I had a lot of merit, although, you're not supposed to do that. But yeah, when I kind of lost it, it was all over then.
You mentioned Bob Gassoff, and oh my gosh, did you have a lot of colorful teammates? Like, after you were traded to the Flyers organization, you talk about one guy who had 3 different fiancées at the same time and a boa constrictor. And I'm not making a phallic joke here. He really owned a boa constrictor.
Yeah, the bull's name I can still remember was Hector, and he went missing during the season because I guess they can go without eating for a long time. I think he was gone for about a month. And this particular player was hilarious because he was married, he was engaged to 3 different girls. So his eventual wife from Canada came up at Christmas to visit, and he had his other 2 girlfriends there at the Christmas party, and then introduced all the fiancés to each other. It was pretty comical.
Do you remember how they got along?
Actually, I was quite shocked that it was quite civil at the Christmas party. There wasn't any glasses flying. And the funniest of all was, after the season, I just happened to be in Victoria coming back from the season. And he was there on his wedding day in a Smitty's Pancake House. And the first thing I said to him, Dale Cook, I said, Cookie, who are you marrying? I said, well, who's the real Mrs. Cook this time? And then he said, well, the Canadian girl won out, he said.
It's like, to tell the truth. Will the real Mrs. Cook please stand up?
Yeah.
So at Flyers camp, I think I can say safely you were not intimidated. At one point, you took on none other than Bobby Clarke. That's one way to get noticed.
Yeah, well, Bobby was kind of like a god. I think the advantage I had a little bit is I knew a lot of the Flyers, like Dave Schultz grew up one town from me, and Oris Kinnerchuk, Eddie Van Imp. There was a big Western influence. And I went there early, even before training camp, and skated with the guys. But Clarky, as you well know, he's relentless, the little prick. And, he just kept hacking me in a scrimmage. when I was rushing the puck. So I just turned around and two-handed him across the chest, and the crowd was gasping. And naturally, I looked to the bench. That's the first thing, to see if the recruits were coming, and they weren't. But then, uh, Clarkie's not going to let that go. So later on in the scrimmage, there was a face-off, and he put his stick up my balls, and it wasn't gently. And then I put him in the death grip and grabbed him by the back of the head and smashed his head in the plexiglass 3, 4 times. And then I looked to the bench again, and I didn't see any of the boys coming. And then I knew I'd earned my stripes then.
That was just the way they said hello in Philadelphia at that time, right?
Yeah, that was like the welcoming mat for me.
I want to show you a photo. See if you remember it. That's you wearing the A, and Fred Sherrow, the Flyers coach, is behind you. Do you recall when this photo was taken?
That was training camp in 73, 74. That's their other pick, Larry Goodenough. They used to call him Izzy Goodenough. And then the fellow on the left, you can tell the big smile on his face. That was Larry Wilson, the coach with the farm team with the Richmond Robins.
Another one of your favorites.
Yeah, he was probably maybe top of the list.
Hey, I want to show you one other thing about this photo. I don't think those are regulation hockey skates.
No, you know what though? You'd really be surprised, Glenn. Like the Flyers, their reputation and everything, but I know they had the least amount of injury time of any NHL team, and it was because of their dryland training. They used this gizmo called the Exergenie or Exercise Genie, and it was developed by this genius guy. He had like something like 10 degrees by the time he was 30. And Shiro had all these innovative techniques and stuff he had learned from the Russians. And, people always think of the Flyers, of the intimidation and the Broad Street bully days, Schultze leading the charge. But there was a lot of science behind their training.
So what should we know about your time with the Flyers farm team in Richmond?
Well, it was the first year. I would almost describe it as a write-off a bit. Like Keith Allen, the general manager, used to come down every couple of weeks and remind me of my, bonus baby can't miss prospect thing, and Larry was beating me to death, and then I had a girlfriend that was in professional ballet. She had her own career. I had mine, plus a 10-game suspension for accidentally hitting a referee. I was very lucky because there was a linesman from Saskatoon that was working the game that night. He put a good word in for me. That's when, I kind of went over the deep end. And it was just like and then Philly wins the cup that year. And then I said to myself, I set my mind on making the team the next season, regardless of that first year in Richmond.
And you did.
Yeah, I was the only rookie to make the opening roster of the Stanley Cup champions, which is not an easy task. I played everywhere. I played center, wing, defense. I led Philly in penalty minutes in training camp, and I was out for bear.
Now, you didn't actually get in a game with the Flyers, did you?
No, it was really strange because I was there. I know because I was at Oris Kinderchuk's for Thanksgiving, which is U.S. the end of November. I'd be in the press box with Billy Clement most of the time, and we go for the warm up and hope to get into the game. But I could understand Shiro because the guys that won him the cup, he was loyal to them, and they had no injuries. If say there had been injury at the time, I could play any position, but then it came to the point where sitting in the press box for 2 months, I needed some conditioning. That's why they sent me down to Richmond. And then my old nemesis Larry was waiting for me with open arms.
Yeah, I'm sure. And a knife in each hand. Um, Off the ice, which was the more memorable brush with greatness? Elvis or Andre the Giant?
Well, that's an awful close one. Like the Elvis story was amazing. You know, I think you read in the book with the chief of police there and everything. I was a great fan of his. Like I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it at first. I thought he was just drunk, and I bought him a drink and I said goodbye, Joe. But Elvis was doing 3 months of concerts in the East Coast, staying in Richmond, and I thought, hey, there's something to this story. But then with Andre, it was more of an awakening because it had to be like 2 in the morning, and we had a lot of French guys on the Richmond team because they used to be the Quebec Aces. And we got back to our hotel, and they said they'd like to introduce me to this friend of theirs. And I looked at him, and I go, my God, I've never seen a bigger head in my life or body. And I sobered up pretty quickly.
I don't blame you.
I shook his hand, and my hand basically disappeared.
Now, it's not a bad deal to say you got traded for Reggie Leach. He went to Philadelphia. You head west to Oakland. And with the Seals, you would play your first NHL game, and your first NHL coach you played a game for was a friend of this show, Marshall Johnston. And it was in, of all places, Kansas City. What do you recall about your NHL debut?
Well, the lead up to it was kind of funny because the trade happened. Like I actually asked Philly because of the problems with Larry if they wanted to send me to another American League team. And then naturally they owed Oakland a first round pick in the Leach trade. So I always jokingly say I got traded for this native guy that, only scored 62 goals for Philly. So I didn't have much to live up to. But the trade happened so fast, and I had to. First of all, Larry had to find me because I went to Georgetown, Washington D.C. for a little sabbatical. Philly was going crazy because Larry didn't know where his own player was, so they sent him on a search, and then I reported right away to Kansas City, and I think I mentioned in the book. I mean, this is what went on in the 70s. But Marshall, I mean, he was a great guy. I think Bill McCreary had a lot to do with taking over and letting him basically canning him. But I still remember Joey Johnson, captain, Joey the Jet, and Marshall's wanting to talk to him before the game, and I'm going, there's something wrong with this picture because he was just brushing him off. And so I had to find out what was going on. I see Joey going in the washroom, and it's because he wanted to take a crap on this rookie's toes. That was the main, his main reason for not talking to the coach. But I don't think I was really even nervous because it happened so fast, and it's your first game, and the adrenaline's going that I think I had a pretty good game. Yeah.
And you mentioned McCreary later that season, the GM taking over as coach, and he decides for some reason to change the way you use your stick.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's sad. I'm telling the truth when I said the guy, and I can vouch about a couple of guys being mentally ill later on in their lives, and these are a couple of the coaches I had. But he just, like, his nickname, we called him Elmer Fudd because he wore this hat and he looked like Elmer, the hunter on Bugs Bunny. But he just had this arrogance and way of rubbing everybody the wrong way, and he just there was no respect or confidence from the team side. But because he was the GM and coach, you didn't have much choice. I mean, I can tell you real quickly that, I mean, talking about things he would do, he taped put tape on my stick to my gloves so I wouldn't be moving my stick around. Like, in today's game, that's all they do is move their stick around
Right.
to block the passes and, block the shooting lanes and everything else. And here's this guy saying I'm playing too much with one hand on my stick, so, and then to do that it's a real demeaning way of, putting a point across.
Well, let's talk about something nicer. How much of a thrill was it to see yourself on a hockey card?
Oh, that's always nice. I mean, you've made it then. And the Seals uniforms, at the time, I know they got voted, I think third place all time or something like that a couple of years ago. I used to joke and say, just because I think we were ahead of our time with the unis and all that, that I'd go out in the warm up with a rose in my teeth. But I know the Seals have kind of like a cult following. They still have I think they have 5,700 people in their fan club today, when you consider how long they've been gone. But there was just some kind of cult-like mystique about the Seals in their existence in the league.
And one night, your old buddies from Broad Street, the Flyers, come to town. Tell me about that game.
Oh yeah, that was a funny game. It was a memorable game because they think I'm 21 years old and I'm the rookie and everything, and I played with them, and I mean, like I said, I led them in penalty minutes in training camp, but they thought they could take advantage of me. And I remember the play going up the ice and Dornhofer holding my stick, and I told Dorney about 2-3 times, like, that's a pet peeve, nobody likes it, but anyway, he wouldn't listen, so I cross-checked him so hard at the blue line that I knocked him out. So Dorney was laying on the blue line, so Cutie McLeish comes to his aid at center ice, and so I dropped him with one punch. So now McLeish is laying at center ice, and it's not looking too, say, pretty for the Flyers. And then Schultze's going crazy on the bench, and he said, I got to come out. And I said, yeah. I said, Davey, I know that. I'm waiting for you. So then Davey jumped out on the ice, and we had a little scrap. So I kind of took care of 3 Flyers in one shift, and I naturally ended up being the first star of the game.
Good for you. One of the few opponents who didn't get Philly flu.
Yeah, no, I knew I knew a few guys in our locker room that did.
I should mention, this is not a PG rated memoir, and not all of the colorful characters are hockey players. For instance, just to give one example, and there's about 400, who was the steel worker?
Oh, that's hilarious. She was one of the, I would say probably there was Chicago Shirley, who was the most famous groupie, but I'd say the steelworker was right up there in terms, and the funniest one, as I said in the book, I had no idea how she could know every practice, every game. Like sometimes we didn't even know where we'd be practicing, and the steelwork would be there religiously. And then it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago, maybe, there was a Howard Cosell impersonator that I met online, a great guy, and he lived on the same street, and he's describing this girl to me, and I said, Jesus Christ, this got to be the steel worker. I said, can you tell me what she does? And then he tells me that she works for the newspaper in the sports department, which I never knew, and it was hilarious,
And that's how she knew where everybody was going to be.
Yeah, and she like I said, she was a good sport, and then when the hockey season was over, I went to my first A's game, and there she was behind the A's dugout in in her A's attire, and I'd venture a guess she's probably got a memorabilia collection bar none.
You said something that was interesting about Phil Esposito. We know him as a larger than life figure, but you said when it came to conversation on the ice, he could actually be dull.
Yeah, I think Phil had a great talent of trying to put you to sleep. He'd be slinking around, the net, or his office in the slot, and he'd be talking to you. And, oh yeah, George, you're a great guy, and this and that. And then next minute, probably goal number 56 goes by, whizzing by your ear. He was a pretty
the,
funny Italian, and
the
he had
opposite of trash talk. Yeah.
yeah, and he had a skate difference. I heard that he had like something like a 9.5 and a 10.5, and he had that funny kind of loping, stride, style. Yeah.
In late March of 75, the expansion Washington Capitals come to town with 0 road wins all season, 0-37. So the Caps win and later parade around the ice after the game. They go back on the ice hoisting a garbage can like it's the Stanley Cup. What was that like from the SEAL side of things?
Well, I think that was pretty benevolent of us to, help the Capitals out, and I guess they had to find some way to celebrate. I mean, I mean, we didn't have a. I think we were starting to turn around, but I mean, that was a really sad record they had. That I mean, it's tough for the players to go through a season like that. So I can understand them, celebrating. I don't know if they had any booze in the garbage can, but
You didn't lose many fights, George, but one you write about in the book was to Dave Hutchison of the LA Kings.
Yeah, Dave, it was so funny the way that fight started because, me being, thinking I'm invincible and the Creation Warrior, I asked my teammates where this guy came from because I never saw him before. And they said he played in the World Hockey the previous year. So I said, well, and technically he's a rookie in the NHL. And, I should maybe greet him and tune him in a little bit. So I think I speared him gently in the stomach to start the fight, and then I to this day I don't know how he got me with that super punch and cut me open with one punch for 22 stitches. But I was bleeding like a pig, and my head was caved in, and definitely had a concussion. And then I realized about the 4 buddies at the game, 2 LA policemen, PD narc guys, my pro skier buddy from Tahoe, and my other buddy from the Bay Area who played in the NFL. And I was so embarrassed. I said to myself, I got to do something. So I was playing with a cast on my one arm. So I got Hutch down, and then got maybe 2, 3, or 4 licks with my cast on his head before I had to go in and get stitched up.
There's a happier memory for you associated with LA. The opening game of the 75-76 season, your first NHL goal, it came on the power play. Can you recall that?
I think vaguely. I mean, I was a pretty offensive guy. I don't know. Uh, I think it just. I think I got my act together later. I was always like, just like in the World Hockey, Joe Crozier always referred to me as the secret weapon. But we had, I'm sure you know the kid there, Ricky Hampton,
Mm-hmm.
and Ricky was a beautiful skater. I mean, in today's game, he'd probably even be better. He was just an effortless skater. A lot of pressure on him, as usual. Everybody's compared to Bobby Orr, and there is only one Bobby Orr. And but I remember, yeah, you always remember your first goal, and yeah, and I had injuries too that didn't help my time in Oakland, unfortunately. But I had a lot of offensive flair to my game if I was, let's just say it, allowed to use it.
The Seals had a troubled 9-year existence. That 75-76 season would be their last in Oakland before packing up for Cleveland. And 2 years after that, they merge with the North Stars and go out of business. When did the players on the Seals get a sense that your collective time in the Bay Area was coming to an end? And how did that affect your ability to concentrate on the games?
Well, we always had a lot, like, the league was running the team for a while, a lot of different ownership issues. Then Mel Swig, who was, the wealthy hotelier, came in there and he kind of stabilized things a little bit. But there, from the management perspective and everything else, there was a lot of uncertainty. And then I can't remember how late it was, but, they had to vote on the new arena in San Francisco, which was turned down, unfortunately. I think if they would have won that vote and got a new arena, the Seals would probably still be in the Bay Area.
So, how tough was it going on the ice, not knowing the state of the franchise?
Yeah, it I'm sure, like in my 2 years, there was a lot of instability from the ownership side and everything else. And, it naturally didn't breed a lot of, say, self-confidence in the direction the team was headed. And then sure enough, like, I think there was a lot of hope that the arena deal would be passed. So that didn't happen until quite late. I can't remember when it was. It was probably shortly after the 75-76 season. And then, the team had to pack their bags and I just talked to my agent, Harvey Weinberg in Chicago, and just asked him to get me the best deal. And then I was kind of shocked when I ended up in the World Hockey Association with Joe the Crow.
Let's talk about that. You end up with the Calgary Cowboys. The coach is Joe Crozier, as you say, Joe the Crow. Once had the team scrimmage, not with pucks, but with a basketball. And one time he threw a wad of bills on the ice in front of you. What was up with that?
Yeah, it was really funny because they didn't have a lot of tough guys on the team. So Joe always had this wad of cash in his pocket, and he had these glasses that were kind of like Coke bottle thick. And then he starts telling me stories about Pat Price, the big pick. And then I said, well, I won the best defenseman the one year. He won it the next year. He's comparing our styles, except I was quite a bit tougher. And he didn't have a resident goon. So he said, hey, let's tear up this contract of yours. And he started firing money all over the ice. And I just kind of said to Joe, I got a pretty decent one-way contract. I'm pretty happy with it. I don't mind mixing it up if, somebody, causes me any grief, but I'm not going to go out there just to be, a goon when I was really a skilled player.
I've heard other players talk about this. It is tough when you get pigeonholed that way.
Yeah, you can, like I said, I was a very skilled guy, but I could also handle myself very well in the fisticuffs department. So then they go, well, listen, we'd like this guy to do that, and it just, I don't mind. Like in junior, I put down Clark Gillies, Bobby Nystrom, Harold Schnaps, tell you name it, and then the pros I fought. Battleship Kelly, Maloney, Hutchison, Vickers. I fought a lot of tough guys, not looking for it. It just, and it's just like I wanted to play the game. And didn't want to be a goon. But the Crow, like I'll tell you a really good story. It was an exhibition, and because the team had been the Vancouver Blazers the previous year, we played the Winnipeg Jets in an exhibition game, and they were the Avco champions. Hull and Hedberg and Nielsen, all the Europeans, and we kicked the shit out of them. We beat them 6-0. They didn't even get a sniff we played so well. So we're all thinking we're going to get a day off and we're going to come back to Calgary and everything else. And Joe ordered us right from the airport bus right to the practice rink, and we did 3-0s for 2 hours. Smokey McLeod and Gary Bones Bromley were going crazy, the goalies, because all there is a million passes, and we just looked at each other. I looked at Smokey and I said, Smokey, what the hell? Like, what are we gaining by doing 2 hours of 3-0s after we beat the Jets 6-0? But
Boy,
this
what
was
would practice have been like if you'd lost?
yeah. It'd probably been a 3-hour practice.
And Joe the Crow also once had you skate a 6-minute shift.
Oh yeah, he had a lot of I don't know what you want to call it, ideas, but yeah, I kept going back to the bench. I'd play for a minute. I want to change, and he'd shut the doors on me. He'd run from both sides, and he said, "One more time, son," and then I'd do another minute and a half shift. Come back to the bench again. I think I did it 4 times. He kept closing the doors on me, wouldn't let me back on the bench, and so I ended up with a 6-minute shift. So I don't know if that was his way of testing my endurance. I don't know. It was funny.
It's funny now. It probably wasn't that funny then.
Yeah. You don't see too many guys doing 6-minute shifts, but then I think you probably read in the book in Davos, HC Davos, I played my first European team. I played a 60-minute game without changing.
You were the Iron Man of Swiss hockey.
Yeah, that's what they called me. Yeah.
So before we get to the European portion of your travelogue, here's a pair of minor league hockey terms that you introduced me to: AC Delco League and Wood Chippers Ball.
Yeah,
definitions, please.
Yeah, it's the ACDC, like the batteries, because the battery heads, and like that Southern League and the North American League. Like I've never seen some of the stuff that, I even went crazy the one game, but that was just because I had an invitation to Super Bowl by the Raiders, and I wasn't exactly having a great time in the Wood Chopper Ball League, because the better player you were, they just hack you all game long, and you'd have to get into scraps there just to keep your sanity.
Let's talk about that Super Bowl story. Your buddy had 50-yard line tickets to see the Vikings and the Raiders, but you were busy playing the middle of your season. So what did you do to try to get yourself some free time?
Well, yeah, it was actually a 3 or 4 day party with the LAPD, the narc guys that I knew. I knew all the Raiders from my Oakland days. And, then we actually would even take the paddy wagons after the 3-day party to the 50-yard line and get out and go to our seats. So, which human wouldn't want to, take part in that? But then I go to myself, I'm playing in this wacko league. And then it just all snowballed one night. They're hacking me to death, like the wood chopper's ball. And I felt sorry for the poor referee, because I just dropped the puck at center ice and skated over and body checked the old guy. And he went, thundering into the boards. Then he got up, and then I choked him till he passed out. And then the Nick Polano sent like about 10 of the guys over the boards to grab me. And I was okay for a while, but I used the same old ploy that I'm okay now and I've settled down. So at that point, the referee was just coming to, and I had my hockey stick cocked like a harpoon, and then threw my stick in a perfect strike in his chest and harpooned him. So all I did was body check the referee, choke him till he passed out, and harpoon him, and I got a 2-game suspension.
2? That's not enough time to go to the Super Bowl.
No, I like I said to my coach, Nick Polano, after I found out about my suspension, I said, honestly, Nick, what does a guy have to do? Kill a referee to go to the Super Bowl?
2-game suspension. Wow. So another brawl, Jeff Carlson, one of the Hanson brothers from the movie Slapshot. This can't be true. He once gave you a cheap shot?
Well, this was another brainchild of Nick Polano. Like we're playing in Syracuse and we're leading 4-1 with a minute to go in the third period. So he puts me up on the wing for extra offense because I was a pretty talented player for that league. And I'm going, okay, why do we need extra offense leading 4-1? So they counter with Carlson. And the period ends. So I skate back we're skating opposite directions to our dressing room. So Carlson decides to sneak up on me and jump me. But then I kind of got the best of him. And then we ended up fighting in the stands. Our skates were sparking. I actually had to have my skate sharpened, but I kind of beat the crap out of Hanson. And then I thought to myself when the third period started, this isn't right. So I opened the penalty box door. There was another guy in there with him. I just told him to stand in the corner unless I was going to let him have it too. And then I took another round out of Hanson just for good measure.
But it was wearing on you when the North American Hockey League season ended. You write that you actually threw your skates in the trash. Thankfully, you begin a decade-plus European hockey career. You do that in Switzerland. And in the book, you write, quote, that brought back your love of the game. Why?
Well, the end, even you probably read there, I refused a call up because Joe was I must have been called up 4 or 5 times and he was just driving me crazy. And anyway, I went to Switzerland and I couldn't have picked a better place than Hotsee, I say it in German, Hotsee, HC Davos, because they were a very traditional top team. I think they've won the most championships in Swiss hockey. And it's just, I'm like a kid again. I'm in an open air rink. There's the Jakobshorn 9,000 foot mountain I'm looking at, and I'm free as a bird. I had 28 goals and 20 assists in 28 games, which is a lot for the Swiss league, and 100 penalty minutes, which was not normal. But it brought back the whole love of the game when I was over there.
You mentioned playing in the outdoor rinks, or at least not fully enclosed rinks. And is this right that you once played a game in a pouring rainstorm?
Oh yeah, that was hilarious. That I'm thinking to myself, they got to call this game, and we're playing against a weak sister in the French part of Switzerland, and it starts raining and raining. I remember I slopped the puck, and I think it went about 15 feet. That's how much rain was on the ice surface. And then when the Zamboni came out, there was maybe 3 rows in the middle of the ice that might have been dry, and the rest was just full of rain. It was like all 10 players. It was like the Keystone Cops stick handling in that only dry area of the arena. It was totally bizarre.
At age 27, you make another go at reaching the NHL. You're at the Edmonton Oilers training camp, and I like this, that you got a laugh out of a teenaged Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, it was so funny, because we weigh ourselves in camp each day. And, everybody was hearing about the Phenom. He'd been around for a year or two. And he comes up to me and, because I'm 27, I'm the older statesman. And he says, introduce himself to me. And I looked at him. I said, Gretzky, where have I heard that name before? And I said, shit, yeah. And then he starts laughing. And, it was kind of a funny moment.
You end up with the Edmonton farm team, first-year team, the Wichita Wind in the CHL, which you called the craziest team you ever played on. Now, that is really saying something. In one game against Tulsa, the team was called for 22 minor penalties. And that's just the beginning of the story. Then what happened?
I had an injury, so I was sitting out that game. So I had a great seat to watch everything. I just can't believe what's going on. And we had we had a talented team, but we had probably some of the toughest guys in the game in that team. We could have probably fought any NHL team or beat them down to the ground. And like for example, Mike Antonovich, he was quite a well-known WHA player. Donnie Murdoch was fighting with him, and Antonovich was getting the best of him. So John Hillworth Jasper would just take his body and throw him on top again, and all these penalty minutes, and then on the third period, I'm looking up at the scoreboard, and they got these Cowboys. You know, it's a cowboy town, running the scoreboard, and they loved the hockey, and especially the rough stuff. And all of a sudden, I see flashing on the scoreboard referee Ian Sandercock staying in the Buena Vista hotel room 202 or 222. And I go, this can't be possible.
Oh,
and
no.
and I go, I've never seen it like this in my life. And sure enough, a couple of Cowboys visited Sandercock and beat the crap out of him in his hotel room.
Who knew you could have such a good time in Kansas and off the ice too? Pot, coke, amphetamines, magic mushrooms, liquor. I mean, your team should have been called the Wichita Out of Control.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, when you think that we're the top farm team, you know, for the Edmonton Oilers, I mean, like I said, we got our act together. We got some pieces at the end of the season. You know, a good example is Donnie Murdoch. I mean, the talent that guy had is amazing. But you know, the doc was honest. He said, you know, I can't stop partying, and you know, Sather kind of shit on him that year because he was really supposed to be playing with Curry and Gretzky. And he had, I mean, Doc's natural scoring ability, his ability to roof that puck like 2 inches from the goalie's nose was incredible. But the stuff that went on, you know, I've seen a lot in my lifetime, and I've lived through a lot, but I've never seen anything what I saw there in that Wichita. It was, and then at the end we fell short one game of winning the league championship.
One more Wichita win story. A giant teammate of yours, Big Billy, was fighting, and he was near the opposition bench, and he got his hair pulled by the other team's doctor. And that did not settle things down, George.
Well, it's funny because you'd recognize the name Jim Nill, who's the GM of the Dallas Stars today. Jim was a pretty good hockey player, and Billy had him down the ice, and Jim was probably looking at hospital time if Billy hit him, because that's how strong. You know, Billy was 6'4", 250, not an inch of fat. You know, all the Bennett brothers. And then all of a sudden, the team doctor decides to help out, so he reaches over the glass and pulls Billy's hair. Well, that's all that was needed to set off the giant. And Billy just took the plexiglass, he just took it out of the boards there, threw it into the crowd, and then tried to go after the doctor. The doctor ran like hell. And then half the team was over in the boards fighting with the fans. And it was almost like a fire broke out in the Salt Palace in Salt Lake. And at the same time, when all this was going on, I was in that melee. Some fan pulled a knife out on Ace Bailey, our coach at the time, and Pete Lopresti, our spare goalie, knocked the knife out of this guy's hand. And then half the team went on the other side of the ice. So half our team was on one side fighting the fans, and half our team on the other side. And it was like a fire broke out in the Salt Palace.
That's Ace Bailey on the left. He was
right,
the coach of the team.
Yeah.
Of all places, Salt Lake City, George.
Yeah, I played there before. No, only a few games when I was down for conditioning after an injury at Oakland. They were a farm team, but it just seemed like something else happened at Salt Lake. Like I came back from an injury and we're playing Salt Lake at the end of the season, and Ace comes to center ice and says we all got to chip in $200 a piece for something. So me and Brian Baltimore were the old elder statesmen of the team. I just said to Ace, I said, Ace, I don't mind paying the $200, but what's this for? And Ace says, well, Billy Bennett got a little rambunctious last night at the hotel and put his hand through 20 doors. And that was to pay for the damage.
Oh my goodness. So back in Europe, and you find yourself in Germany, and is this true that while at practice, you're in West Berlin and you shoot a puck? This is before the fall of the Berlin Wall, and you shoot a puck into East Berlin?
Yeah, our practice, this was with Berlin, and our practice rink was so close to the wall in this vetting stadium, and the stadium was open on both ends, just had a roof, but it was open. So I decided to fire a slap shot over the Berlin Wall, which immediately set off the machine guns that come out of the ground. They have all the, all these sensors and everything. And so it was pretty hilarious when the puck dropped over the wall there, and I heard all these machine guns going off, and my teammates told me, what exactly was happening.
What was it like visiting and playing with your team? You went to Leningrad. What was it like in Russia playing, visiting, and even watching a Russian team practice there?
Well, it was really unique because that was the 81-82 season. We were the first club team ever invited by the Russian Ice Hockey Federation to play exhibition games in Russia. And that was because my other import player was Alexei Mishin, who was a fabulous hockey player. And sure enough, Mihailov and Petrov were the coaches of the second division team. And I remember they didn't want me to stay after practice because it was communist Russia. But I just told them I want to stay with Alexei and watch his practice. And they had two teams on the ice, 40 players, and it was just like clockwork, the drills and the speed and the pace. Yeah, it was probably the best practice I'd ever seen, run by Mihailov and Petrov.
Tell us who's in this photo. You're the one on the right.
I'm on the right, and that's Mihailov in the center. And the guy on the left is Alexei Mishin, my other import player, who at that time played like 565 games in the Russian league, which was like 13th place all time. He even played with CSKA Moscow with Karlamov and the boys. Yeah, he scored 90 goals that season when I played with him in Hamburg and never took one slap shot.
Wow. 4 words I never expected to say in a hockey podcast. Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi.
Yeah, that was an amazing thing because, as you read in the book, this president of ours, Heinz Reifenbach, was like the Robin Hood of German hockey. Steal from the rich, give to the poor. 70,000 city Iserlohn. He wanted to win the championship so bad, and he'd do anything to do it. And we thought we were getting this cement company as a new sponsor. 10 million marks in the mid 80s, which is quite a bit of money. And then in the end, he came in with his bodyguard that looked like the guy from James Bond, Jaws. He had a gun on each side of his leather jacket all the time. Biggest hands I've seen in a human. And our president takes this scroll out, and at the end, he says our new sponsor is Muammar Gaddafi. And we had 10 Canadians on the team, and we were in shock. I said to the guys, whatever happens, we can't get on a losing streak because I don't know what this guy's going to do,
And what's that on the front of the uniform?
We had in German it says Das Grüne Buch, which means the Green Book, and it was uh, Gaddafi's propaganda book that was given to all Libyans or anyone in the world. But every Libyan in Libya had to have one of those books. That was his propaganda book. It had that, the Green Book, and then his name, Muammar Gaddafi, on the bottom of the jersey, which he was a world terrorist at the time. So it was a little bit unsettling going out for that first game with Muammar Gaddafi on your jersey.
Yeah, I would think so. I've cherry picked a couple dozen stories from the hundreds in the book. I mean, sometimes there's three great stories on a single page in your book. But the last one that we have time for, I need you to describe the night that you were selected to stop a penalty shot. And this was a concept that was pioneered by Coach Roger Nielsen as coach of the Peterborough Petes, but you put it to use in the German leagues. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, that was a crazy night, and it's really funny because the goalie that I didn't want in the nets actually is a doctor here in Playa de Carmen right now, where I'm vacationing. It's so funny because we were down 8-7. We needed this game for the playoffs. I was playing for Hanover against Kassel, the team I played for the last 3 years in Germany, and I was playing a one-on-one with our goalie out of the net, empty net. I had the guy, but Bodo, our goalie, decides to throw a stick on the ice. So naturally, it's an automatic penalty shot. And I had kind of had it with Bodo uh, that game, especially after throwing a stick on the ice to cause the penalty shot with 10 seconds to go. And I went to our coach, who was a military guy, and I said, I don't want to see Bodo on the net ever again tonight. So he automatically assumed our backup goalie was going to go in. But I just remembered somebody had told me about the Stackhouse story when he did it in junior in Peterborough. So I said to him, no, I'm going to go in the nets. So now the referees had never seen this in Germany before. They probably had a 15-minute conversation at center ice. Well, I was pretending I didn't put on any, I just took the goalie stick, went in my normal gear and was pretending to be a goalie and doing goalie stretches and this and that. And the leading scorer of the league was taking the penalty shot. And I knew him he's from Calgary. And I knew he wouldn't slap the puck at me because he knew I'd beat the shit out of him. So I had a little bit of plan devised, and finally the referees couldn't come to any decision, allowed me to do the penalty shot. And this guy was the fastest skater in the league, and he wound up and he's just flying over the blue line. And then when he looked up, he saw George the Pac-Man goalie coming out about halfway. And I greeted him, and I slid down on one side to sucker him in to go to the other side, and which he did. And then I poke checked the puck. So that was automatically on the penalty shot. And the crowd, even though it was the visiting rink in Kassel, they were going crazy because they'd never seen anything like this. And then to cap the evening off, I was playing with Bernie Federico's brother, Kenny, who was a hell of a, he played in Salt Lake actually in that team with the Golden Eagles that beat us. I said, if we win the draw, you throw that Hail Mary pass that the Roadrunner in Montreal was so famous for skating under. And I said, I'm bolting up center ice. So sure enough, that happened. And there was two guys chasing me, and I just one-handed them away. And with, I think, about 2 seconds left on the clock, I one-handed the puck up in the top corner to tie the game 8-8 after stopping the penalty shot.
First, you play goalie, then you play Yvonne Cornway.
Yeah,
Wow.
I was a bigger version of Yvonne, but I probably could skate almost as fast.
See, now, normally I'd say that's a tall tale. It's a big fish story. It can't possibly be true. But when it comes to you, George, we know that you actually caught the big fish.
You got that right.
So these are true stories. like none you've heard before. George, this has just been a tremendous hour of sharing insights and things about hockey that people don't hear every day, or maybe never at all. But now
Well,
we heard them, and thank you for being the one to share them.
thank you, Glenn. I tried to make it interesting, and I don't want to say I read a lot of books that were a little bit boring, but I just wanted to tell it the way it really was.
Well, you didn't write one that was boring. So let's finish with this. Tell people where they can get the fourth period between the ice sheets.
Right now, my book, The Fourth Period Between the Ice Sheets, can be bought on Amazon. And I believe my graphics lady also said if you go to your local bookstore, I think anywhere, they will also order the book at no cost.
Well, that is wonderful. What a life, George. Who's going to play you in the movie?
Well, this is really funny, Glenn, but I thought if it would make a great Netflix or whatever series.
Yeah.
And you won't believe this, but the guy that grew up in Oakland, California was Tom Hanks. And Tom actually worked in our concessions when I was playing for the Seals. So I think he'd be the first guy I'd approach. Yeah.
Well, I think Tom would do it justice, but you might need somebody a little younger for some of the hockey playing scenes.
Well, then I guess I'll pose the question, Glenn. How old are you then?
I always tell people, George, that I look remarkably good for 98.
Yeah, and you know what I say? I pay $50 for this post office box in Hollywood each year, and that way I can lie 10 years on my age.
Yeah. This has been so much fun, George. Much success with the book, and please let us know when you sign the Netflix contract.
Okay, and you know what, Glenn? I might have to get cracking and get to a Kraken game one of these days.
You're in. Are you in Victoria, or where are you living now?
I reside in Victoria. Yes.
Well, if you do come on down to Seattle and you promise not to beat me up too bad, I'll be happy to show you around Seattle.
Okay, and you know that it's trouble if I show up in my full gear, right?
Well, just give me some advance notice so that I can hide.
Okay. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, George.
Thank you very much, Glenn.